what's coming up on the show. Sports page is coming your way. Mount Rushmore from Colin Buig officially at 8:30 this morning. OTB Culture Club is back. It's week 2 of it. This week it is Dermot Kennedy. It's in association with Now TV. He's picked Gladiator, which is available for download and to watch and stream on Now TV. And then Lockdown Lowdown today features some sporting highlights and also the worst pour of Guinness that you're ever going to see from a member of Team OTB. It is time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
Owen has already taken you through offtheball.com, so I'll very briefly remind you of what is up on offtheball.com at the moment. And the lead story there is Kilban explaining hurling to Hullet is an incredibly surreal moment. Mark Chapman from, I actually know more from the NFL coverage than Match of the Day, but you'll all know him as BBC's Match of the Day guy. A great guy, really comes across in this interview exactly like he comes across on TV. Somebody who's just enthusiastic about his gig and about sport generally. And here he is talking about Kilban, explaining to Ruth Hullet about hurling. In rugby, there was a fantastic relationship there between kicker and captain. That's Ron O'Gara talking about his relationship with Brian O'Driscoll. And please celebrate with me. Neil Mellor was on last night talking about the Champions League. We'll play a clip from this a little bit later on. Obviously, he, sets up the goal. Is that how we phrase that on? I'm not sure, but certainly he's around when Stevie G smacks that ball in against Olympiacos.
The Irish Independent this morning, Jared, leads with a photograph of James Sugrue on the back of the newspaper. He's going to have to wait to make his Masters bow. It's going to be pushed back until November at least. So, of course, he, after winning the Amateur Open last year, he got the invite. So he's going to have to wait until later this year to get teeing off in Augusta. Angry Keane in showdown with FAI over his future role. This is Aidan Fitzmaurice writing about the crunch talks that are probably going to happen between Robbie Keane and the FAI over the next 48 hours. And Donncha Ball writing this morning that the AFL is to curtail recruitment of Irish players as COVID-19 bites. So, of course, foreign recruitment probably seen as a luxury at this point in Australia. Possibly more worrying than that is like what happens to players on the lower end of the wage scale in Australia. Can they continue to play? Will clubs be able to afford it? I think the answers will probably become clear over the next few weeks and months. But the AFL, like every sporting organisation at the moment, counting pennies.
In the Examiner this morning, Prenti GAA has chance to halt runaway train of inter-county spending. Obviously, there's going to be no inter-county spending at the moment, and certainly it's going to be interesting to see how quickly counties go back to spending the money that they were spending on backroom teams and travel and all the preparation costs that they were into it. Money is the main story there as well. Pandemic may cost Premier League at least £1 billion sterling. And FIFA moves to approve extension of contracts until season's finished. This is going to be very interesting. The whole point of the Bosman ruling was that football needs to act like a business and needs to obey the rules of business. All of a sudden, they're unilaterally extending contracts. If the players decide they don't want this to happen, then it won't happen. So they're saying that they would like it to happen. We'll wait and see. All-Ireland finals could be played in October or November. I think this is a perfectly legitimate thing to be doing, is to have these plans in place. And I mean, we've spoken a bit about this at the very start, Owen. The whole notion of us finishing in September. We don't need to finish in September. We just need, and as soon as possible, when it's safe to do so, we need to get back to some kind of sense of these games will happen. This is how we gather. This is how we celebrate life. These are important moments. That to be slaves to a calendar and a date and a time frame and say, no, it's gone, it doesn't make that much sense to me. In a way, I don't fully understand exactly why the RNA didn't just say, we're going to play the British Open at some point this year. We'll come back to you in a couple of months' time when we see how the calendar is looking. Anyway, Galway GAA Chiefs brace for €1 million shortfall due to COVID-19. So money is the main story in the Examiner this morning.
The Irish Times today leads with Premier League chief claims top flight clubs could go bust. This is Richard Masters talking about the fact that obviously a few Premier League clubs have put their staff on furlough, referring to the fact that it might actually be more necessary than you think because these Premier League clubs are going to hit the rocks soon. There is a possibility that they could hit the rocks soon. Of course, that doesn't include the likes of Liverpool, but perhaps the likes of Bournemouth. It might be more necessary than some of us think. Spain preparing protocol for return to action. Meanwhile, so this is a theme we've seen over the last couple of days. Bundesliga return to training with social distancing being practiced with 4 or 5 people on the pitch at one time over the last couple of days. Spain now preparing to get back on the pitch. Of course, we had that report in the London Independent last week that the Premier League are considering World Cup style camps in order to try and make something similar happen. So that's 3 different leagues who are, of course, moving in the direction to try and get football back up and running behind closed doors. It's interesting to see when it happens. You've got 3 different countries who actually are moving at very different rates, and you've got the idea of potentially completing a Champions League. The year is out. Whether or not that'll happen, I think, is a big question mark. Then World Cup, highly unlikely to be moved from Qatar. At least it's being said. That's the best thing about these stories whenever they come out. Another when there's allegations of bribery around giving the World Cup, it's like, nah, it's grand. This is commonplace. We actually don't need to look into this. We actually don't need to move to the World Cup anywhere else. It is totally fine. That was a bygone era. And as you mentioned there already, Ger, extended contracts to facilitate longer season.
The Times of London, Mourinho is warned over park training. Spurs manager and players flout lockdown rules. The picture's a little bit misleading because it's Mourinho walking, holding a stopwatch. Now, he is just with Ndombele. I don't know. There's a picture of him and some people in the background. They might just be hangers-on. I don't know what that is. The story that they put out is that he was just with Ndombele, and so therefore this isn't breaching too much of the lockdown rules. It's not like he was training 4 players, even though 2 of the other Spurs players do appear to have been working out together. Now, who knows? Maybe those 2 Spurs players happen to live with each other. It's unlikely that they're flatmates or, mock tutor mansion mates, however it may be. But maybe they are, I mean, I don't know the living arrangements. They're not that unlikely that 2 20-somethings who are very rich decide that they're going to have a bachelor lifestyle living together, is it?
No, I would be surprised though. It's also they were also spotted in the same park as Mourinho and Ndombele, so it's not an outrageous suggestion to make that they were together. But it has been said that they were separate. Sessegnon and Davinson Sanchez were separate to the 1v1 session. If you have that amount of money, is there not a situation where you can actually just call over to Tanguy Ndombele's house, or can Ndombele call over to Jose's house, and they could do it secretly? If you're going to mess the rules up, if you're going to break the rules, why would you do it in such a common place where clearly there is going to be photographs taken of you?
Yeah, at the Spurs training ground, which I presume is empty. And I mean, I'd say he probably could get keys if he wanted to. It does seem a bit strange. MP's fury over furlough use. This is, they've dug out another MP who is unhappy with the fact that, just trying to find it, Julian Knight, the DCMS committee chairman, issued a withering response last night in a media release that perhaps provocatively also included a copy of Master's letter. So it's like this is politicians. The death toll in England yesterday was the equivalent of 2 airplanes. And that is the only story that matters in the UK at the moment. This whole thing about some clubs using a government scheme, which is designed to save businesses, versus other clubs not using it, has been just this very strange sideshow to the main story, which has been the mishandling of the entire crisis by the British government. And this row about football is actually a really easy distraction for the politicians, as opposed to talking about the main thing. So I don't know. And then Ascot behind closed doors. That's the Queen apparently has said, yeah, Ascot behind closed doors is a good idea, rather than not having it at all. So we might have some racing to look forward to sooner rather than later.
The back page of the Irish Daily Star leads with the quotes from Richard Masters. Doomed is the headline. Premier League Supremo fears €1 billion wipeout, and the English FA chief warns stricken clubs face oblivion.
So sorry, which one did you do? You did the Mail?
I just did the Star.
You just did the Star.
Okay, so skipped ahead.
I think, yeah. So will I do the Mail next? Mourinho's antisocial training. Spurs boss and players break rules. Still on track for classics. That's the story we just talked about, the Queen being on side. And Ireland's athletes won't fall through the cracks. Ireland's elite athletes will not be allowed to fall through the cracks as they deal with COVID-19 restrictions that have shut down Irish sport. That's the vow of Liam Harbison, the director of the Irish Sport Institute, the elite facility which is central to the preparation of Ireland's Olympic hopefuls. So they obviously have all their support networks in place to try and support the Irish athletes. And they're going to need them, because obviously it's going to be very difficult for anybody to come through this. But imagine if your job was to be an elite athlete at the end of this, when the ennui grips and the fear of the existential crisis that is gripping society. You're like, yeah, I got to go and run a race now. It's going to be tricky enough for some people to match. So, all right, what's next?
The Daily Telegraph this morning leads with clubs and leagues may go under in virus crisis. FA chairman gives shock warning for games future. TV could seek rebate even if top flight games are played. And as you said there, Queen backs plan for Royal Ascot to go ahead behind closed doors. And Levy could let Spurs staff work on his private estate is the latest from Tottenham Hotspur. That doesn't involve Jose Mourinho and Tanguy Ndombele doing one-to-one sessions.
Okay. And just in terms of the order here, you've just done the Telegraph, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that, Owen. And what should I do next if anybody wants to
while you're looking for your newspapers there, I'm sure we've got them all rounded up. Just the Irish News this morning. Take your pick. WBO top ranked Conlon has no shortage of options for world featherweight title shot, and Antrim players and officials donate $6,000 to food banks, which is a great story there this morning. Inside the Irish News sports section, then Paul Kelly looks back at the key contributors and contributions to Armagh football over the past 10 years, perhaps something of a 10-year Mount Rushmore from the Irish News on Armagh greats. Jemmy Clark there, photographed on the back of the Irish News sports section.
That's just to tab of the morning to you. We don't normally do the front pages, but the front page of the Irish Daily Star this morning, they obviously have a fitness pull-out and they've got pictures of Damien Duff and Stephen Kenny. But the headline is the most important thing. Lockdown extended. Go out your back in tan. Checkpoints plan to stop holidaymakers. Gardaí get extra powers. 36 die in sad day. But the order is get out your back in tan. Don't be congregating anywhere where there might be other people. Don't be going to holiday homes. Oh, and I know you obviously have a couple of mansions down in Kerry that you would consider holiday homes as opposed to your main residence, and they're going to be lying idle this weekend.
Well, the whole holiday, there seems to be a lot of people shocked at the whole holiday homes thing, and like it does feel very. If you felt it was 2006 watching a television show and having to wait next week for the episode, they certainly felt 2006 talking about holiday homes again. But then there were some people who were totally shocked by it. It's not actually that shocking if some people have them and they're not paying for a house in Dublin, for example. A home and a holiday home in a different part of Ireland may actually be cheaper than one house in Dublin. Who knows? But yeah, it's mad that where the boom had returned to the point where holiday homes were the norm again.
0879 180 180 is the number on WhatsApp this morning. You can leave us a comment wherever you are watching this on your streams. It is 8:34. We're getting into the Cork Mount Rushmore next here on OTB AM with Colin Buick. But earlier we brought you some of our Brian O'Driscoll and Ron O'Gara special from last night's show. You can listen back to the full chat if you subscribe to Rugby on OTB. It's the OTB Podcast Network. You can watch it back on our YouTube channel. Here they are talking about Stephen Kenny's appointment as Irish manager. Have a look.